later. I am here with Bud Nye of Nye Technical Services, and I'm going to let him do all of the talking and tell you what he does because it's more technical than I want to try to explain, but he's a good guy. He's in Pennsylvania, right? Which part of Pennsylvania are you in? Pittsburgh?
I'm just north of Pittsburgh.
Okay. All right. Well, Bud, tell me about yourself and what you do.
So I'm Bud. I own Nye Technical Services and Iris Technology Group. So we got started about 50 plus years ago. My dad was an electrician. A couple years into being an electrician, he got into PBX, which is basically phone systems for businesses, and started learning low voltage wiring. So fast forward many years, he was a trusted phone system installer in the area. I started with him when I was 14. I think it was the summer I was 14. Started from the very bottom. He was still doing commercial electrical work, and it essentially turned into me realizing electrical contracting is not for me. However, the low voltage and the technology really sparked my interest. So when I turned 17, I went to a cyber school to work full-time during the day. Then I ended up going to night school for college for IT. And so I would learn something at night, and then immediately the next day I was trying to sell it to his customers. And so that just started to roll into the IT side of the company. So you fast forward a little bit, that rolled up enough that I needed to actually go out on my own. So in 2017, I started Nye Technical Services, which split off and was really focused on the IT side. We would get requests for cameras and wiring and things like that. So I would subcontract my father. I hired my first employee in 2018. And I have a close friend of mine who was basically, he helps build IT service companies. And he was giving me and feeding me all of these things. I started putting them into place. Our first year we doubled. Then I just continued to grow. So we added employees, but then we started getting larger calls for the low voltage side, more than my father could handle. So I hired a tech to help him. Fast forward again. 2021, I ended up just taking over the whole low voltage division. I made him a superintendent, and I have a full-time crew for the low voltage side. We had 3 employees on the IT side, and we were growing rapidly. So then we fast forward to last year, 2024, and I ended up having to split the IT company from the low voltage company just because they were growing so much and they had such a separate line of business. And I brought in a managing partner on the IT side to help me, which is actually the partner that helped me grow it. So he's running that and growing that side of the business. And I've continued to focus on the low voltage side and get back kind of to my roots, which leads us now to, we're, I think, around 15 or 16 employees across the companies. We've grown substantially in revenue. We hit our first million in 2020, and we last year hit 2.2. So this year we're probably going to do 2.4. But we've grown very substantially and rapidly, and there's a lot of challenges that we've hit, but we've stayed a leader in the industry, and our reputation is really kind of growing in the Pittsburgh area, and now we're starting to open a second location out towards Harrisburg and Lancaster.
Okay, well, you said a couple of really interesting things. I'm trying to determine which route I want to go here with my next question. But the first one that I think I would like to talk about is, so you started working with your dad. Mm-hmm. And that is something a lot of small businesses will start either working for parents or working with siblings or family in some sort. So what has that experience been like? Because you've kind of flipped gradually the script from working for him to now he works for you.
Yeah, so I had a non-typical experience. So, most people, when they talk about working with their family, they say that they're constantly butting heads. It's just not a good situation. And really, my dad and I, we rode in the same truck every single day till 2017. From the time I was, 17 years old, all the way up till 2017. So, I loved working with my dad. He taught me a lot. He had a lot of experience. And I think one of the coolest things about where we are now and what I've been able to do is that, he's got a salary now. He gets to kind of have a little bit of a cushy job. I get to cover all of his bills. I bought his house off of him, so he doesn't have rent or mortgage. He doesn't have to worry about retirement. Like, we're able to just completely take care of him. So, like, from my experience, it's really been a very positive thing. You know, I hear a lot of people say, like, it's hard to work with family. I didn't have that experience, but I was also very close with my dad. So yeah, overall, it's been a great experience, and I think that if you're able to get along with the people, that's kind of like the more important side of it. Not to say that we didn't have our disagreements, and you know, we had a tech that used to work for us, and you know, he'd say that my dad and I would get into a sword fight every once in a while, and you know, one of us would win our way, and that was it. So, but yeah, it was a good experience, and it's made me very happy to be where we are now.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that it helped that you kind of split off from him, even if it was just kind of, you know, in theory? I mean, you did, but you're still working closely together, where you sort of built your own thing and it wasn't completely his that you were trying to take over?
Yeah, I think that was a very important part of what I had to do, because to that point, right, I'm basically running my business through his business. I didn't have to worry about the books. I didn't have to worry about salaries or anything like that. He was paying me a salary at that point, and I would get, you know, like a bonus or whatever you want to call it for closing work and like selling computers or things that had absolutely nothing to do with what he was doing. And then it basically was like, you know, I had to start this, and I had to get my own insurance. I had to get all my own stuff. I'm covering my own payroll. So I had to be able to stand on my own aside from what my dad was doing. And that really pushed me that, you know, I at least had him to fall back on in a way. But he had never sold computer or IT services. And I mean, I'll be frank, not to jab at you, Dad, but you're not a tech guy. He's very much old school when it comes to the phones and technology. So that wasn't really in his purview. So I had to figure out how to sell that. I had to figure out how to maintain that and service it and install it and build those processes and build that part of the company from the ground up. And so having, you know, his background and what really pushed me, and I think what was positive, was that he pushed me to be the face of the company and had me in front of people. And I think one of the major things about our business and the reason we've grown is that often I get comments that, you know, people don't expect to actually see me in person or talk to me in person or over the phone, because a lot of people from my generation just have poor communication skills. But I've been doing it since I was 14. So I'm used to being there and shaking the hand, meeting the person. And that is all, you know, a major part of what my dad taught me. And then to go out on my own and split off and just basically have to kind of do it on my own, which was really cool, because the second year I was in business, I actually surpassed his best year in business by almost double. Like, wow. That was a big deal. And now, you know, I've had months, just singular months, that are almost double or triple his best year. So like it was a big thing to be able to have both. But I really did need to go out and stand on my own. That was something that I had to do, aside from working with my dad.
Okay. Well, it's a very cool story, because it's like you each built your own legacies now, but now it's kind of a combined effort. Right. All right. There was something else that you said in kind of that opening intro, and it made me think you must be a very fast action taker, because you were like, I would go learn something in the evening and then sell it the next day. Do you think that adds to the success that you've had, like the amount of, or the action that you take in a very quick amount of time?
Yeah. So I definitely, so like when I'm saying that, I'm not even joking. Like one of the things that I really specifically remember, it was around 2008, and I was in my first server operating system class, and I was learning servers. And so it was like our first night, I learned how to build a server and learned how to build all the things that I needed to do. And then literally the next day, we were at one of my dad's clients, and we were wiring stuff, and he was asking if we knew anybody that worked on computers. And I'm like, I can build a server for you. I can sell you some computers. And I sold him like that week. So I was like, I was still learning it, but you know, I was like, I'm just going to give it a shot. Like, you know what? Let's do it. And so there was a point, I would say around 2023, 2024, where I started to have some issues where I was growing past the point that I knew really what to do. And it started to cause a lot of inaction. And so I got stuck in this analysis paralysis. And that led me through into 2024 and 2025. And so, 2024, I made some action and we got the company split, but we still kind of felt a little stagnant. But this year, one of the major things that's caused major growth for us this year, and I'm going to shout out a mutual friend of ours, Paul. He had sent me some recommendations or referrals for different people I was looking for, like a virtual CFO, and some other things. And eventually he got tired of it. And he's like, listen, I keep giving you all these referrals and you don't do anything with it. He's like, I'm going to give you this referral, but you have to execute and do something. And I was like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And then I just started executing. And then I just continued to execute. And so what I found is that even if it's not the correct action or something goes wrong with it, taking action is better than sitting there and doing nothing. And so having that will to execute, that's what sets a lot of people apart in business. Because once you commit and once you say, okay, I'm going to execute on this, and you do, then that's half the battle. If you sit there and you constantly don't do anything, or you're constantly analyzing things, then you're never going to get anywhere. Something partially done is better than something not done at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that a lot, and you probably do too. As you're talking to other business owners or potential business owners, I will see people that get hung up on, well, I don't know what I want to name my company, or I don't know what my logo is. Something that's just so bare bones, and it's holding them up from starting. Now, it's a very rudimentary example, obviously, but it's I see people that will never even start because they're just I don't have a logo. I don't have colors picked out. I'm like, what does that have to do with anything?
Just start.
Yeah. And it's do you have a product to sell? Just go sell it. Or
exactly.
A service, whatever it is. I hate to use what is that, building the plane as you're flying it kind of thing, but
yeah,
sometimes you just got to take off and start.
Well, and I think that also kind of harkens back to me having to go out on my own. Mm-hmm. And what I've found from talking to other people across my industry and other industries and just business owners in general is that you often, people ask you how did you know when it was time to start? How did you know it was the right time to do it? You don't. Jump off the cliff and you have your back against the wall, and then you have to make it work. Mm-hmm. And those are the people that thrive and succeed, because there is no other choice other than to succeed. Mm-hmm. The only way you fail is if you give up. And if you don't have another choice, you don't have another choice. So all of that put together, taking the action and then just kind of pushing yourself through it, that's really the way that you kind of have to go. That's what it means to be a business owner. It's not easy. It's not fun. It's a lot of stress, but you have to continue to execute and you have to continue to believe in yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's the core fundamental that you need to succeed.
So I find it interesting because you basically had youth on your side when you're first starting. It's almost like you don't even know any better, right? Than to you learn something, you're like, yeah, I'll sell it. And it seems like as you've gotten older, you started to get into that analysis process. Now there's bigger numbers, there's other people involved. So that probably adds to it because suddenly your decisions affect more than just you. Yeah. But yeah. I guess kudos to Paul for pushing you for.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a good friend, and he's a good sounding board. So for sure, that's I think a lot of it came from I've never been here before. Mm-hmm. When I started out and it was 1 or 2 employees, at one point way back when, my dad had 4 employees. My dad had been there, so it was always hey, what did you do? How do we get through that? But then I started to get to 6, 7, 8 employees. And then I start seeing things okay, we have months where they're not good months and we're losing money. And I'm like, well, what do I do? And he's just kind of I don't know. And that's where I start getting stuck okay, well, I don't know what to do here. And that's where having the network and talking to people is really important, because it's not only that they're going to give you some advice, but they'll give you actionable things you can execute on that will have a true actual value to you and your company.
Mm-hmm. This is one of the topics, and you're kind of right in that revenue stream of like that 1 million to 2 million. A lot of people, I don't want to say getting to $1 million is easy, because it's not necessarily, but getting there is much easier. Then you hit that $1 million mark, and a lot of times you kind of had that stalling period because it just becomes so much more complicated, right? Like it's like suddenly trying to figure out if you're even profitable or not is difficult. And then there's way more cash flow issues because, as you've probably experienced, growth is very expensive, and trying to figure out like how do you even physically get to the next plate? Like, how do you manage the cash flow? How do you manage the people to get there?
Right. That was a big thing for us. Like, north of $1 million, I started to like, okay, we're sputtering a little bit of like, I'm not making any more money in a net profit sense than I was at 500,000 or 600,000 that I am at, 1.2 million. And the reality behind that is the amount of staff that is needed to get you past $1 million and then get you to 2 million is so much more, because I've had to go from, I'm only hiring field techs and I'm the sales guy, I'm the guy running the projects, I'm the guy doing the operations, to, with the amount of projects and the amount of hours, I have to get a project manager, I have to get an operations person. I'm at a point now where I've had to get a salesperson, and you have to have a superintendent now, where you can't just have guys that go out, and like this whole operation that you have to build, which is a bridge from 1 million to 2 million. Mm-hmm. But then, once you get past that and you get to an operational efficiency, that it's like, okay, the overhead stops, and now it's really just adding techs or adding people to your service business that are generating revenue directly for the bottom line. Then you start to make more money. And so I've often been told that it's like a ride from, up to the $1 million, it's a little easier to deal with. And then from 1 million to 2 million, you start to hit this wall where you're really not going to have great net profit until you get all of your operations and everything in place. And then you hit that maybe 2 million or 2.5 million to 5 million range. It's good money. I've even seen, I talked to a plumber the other day, and it was a kind of the same deal. He's like, 1 to 5 million, I made a lot of money. He's like, I do 15 million right now. He's like, it feels like a struggle to make money, but north of 20 million a year, you start making great money again. Mm-hmm. And so it's these little like breakthroughs to get you to that next level, to get you to that service level, to make sure that you're not, dropping the ball on your service quality, and that your installs are still matching to the level that got you to where you are. And so to do those things, you have to put so much more in place than I ever realized. Like if you'd asked me before this year what an operations person did, I would have stared at you blankly. I had no idea. But now he is like one of the most pivotal parts of my company. Right? Like he's so deeply important to the company and the operations and everything that we do day to day that I can't imagine going back to not having someone like him involved in the company. But it comes at a cost. And then obviously you have these larger jobs, your tickets start to go from $10,000 jobs to 25 to 50. Before this year, the highest job that we'd ever sold was a $100,000 job. And this year alone, we sold two $200,000 jobs. And I'm quoting $50,000 to $100,000 jobs on a regular basis. But with that then comes a cash flow constraints, right? So you have revenue timing, where, maybe you get approval for the job and you get a deposit, but then you say, like, so this was an issue I ran into earlier this year. I did not have progress payments set up correctly. So I would have a big job that would span across 4 months, and I would have a 50% deposit and then a 50% upon completion. But now I have to eat 4 months of salary before I can send that bill once the job is completed. Mm-hmm. So have to have that process figured out. But then you also have revenue timing, which is different jobs sometimes will come in that have deadlines. So, we run into an issue where we might be a little short on work right now, and we have a big job that's sitting out there that we kind of hope we don't get in because we have a few other large jobs that might hit. But say this job hits, it's, 5 weeks of work. soaks up 2 of your guys, but now, okay, we're running into an issue of we have other jobs that we haven't been able to close out because the contractor's behind, the client is behind, product is behind. So then all of those things start to pile up, and now you get revenue not hitting when you need it. So you've got to be prepared for those things. Whereas like on, the smaller jobs that we used to quote, we complete a job in a week. Now we've got jobs that are spanning 500, 600, 700 hours that you're talking months to complete. So that's a big change for once you start to scale, understanding what that revenue and that revenue tail looks like, and really having to have a strong understanding of your numbers too. One of the things that we do, at least in my proposals, we track labor as a cost of goods sold so that we can actually look at what the real gross profit margin is on when we're selling product, and then what we need to cover overhead after that cost of goods sold. And not having a grip on that number and not knowing, are you going over on hours? Is your cost of goods sold going too high? Like not being able to track those things and not having those systems, which is what my operations guy has brought in. He's able to do reports on it, understanding labor utilization, like there's so much that once you get north of that $1 million and you start, to sell $1 million, you got to sell $80,000 a month. Eventually it's going to be less amounts of jobs sold, but higher gross revenue. And so to have that, you have so many other things and moving parts. So that's where I think that really that's why you see that wall when you start to hit $1 million and start to try to push past it. And why it's so difficult for companies to keep up with it.
And there's I can't remember what the stat is exactly, but something like 80% of businesses fail, not because they're not profitable, but because of the timing, as you just mentioned. It's like if you run out of cash, sometimes you just can't even you can't continue operations, and people aren't going to show up to work if you're not paying them. If you can't buy the equipment in order to install it, there's all of these things that you have to figure in. And like you were mentioning, so the timing of things coming in, or do you send all of your guys out on this job where it's a 3-month long job, or do you hold 2 back so that they can do smaller jobs so that there's more revenue coming in on a regular basis? These are all kind of things that you think about through these processes, and whether you want to go all in on these big projects and be able to front a lot of the cost of that. I think your progress paying, that's a great idea that a lot of businesses should be implementing if they're not. I see the 50-50, set up a lot, and it helps in that initial, buying your cost of goods sold, maybe a little bit of that initial direct labor that's going into the job, but then it's like halfway through it, especially when it's one that's taking a lot of time. You may end up midway through the job and you can't even finish it.
Right.
So,
right.
There was another thing that you had mentioned. So as you are thinking about this revenue too, one of the things that I think is important in a lot of businesses that are doing these deposits on work, if you are using those deposits to actually cover other jobs and the labor and stuff, that can create cash flow issues as well, right? You're using the deposit on this job not to buy all of the equipment that you need, but to finish the labor on this job. That's another thing that kind of you want to take into account when you're doing this type of work. So.
And to be fair, that is something that we got into as we're growing and as we're getting kind of the bigger picture. Yeah, we're going to have times where that deposit is kind of going towards other things. And some of that has to do obviously with progress pay and making sure those projects and the revenue timing. But the other side that we run into is, and this is one of the sides that nobody really likes to talk about, the collection side and trying to get people to pay. We literally just had an incident where we have an international corporation, 2,000 employees, and they were 60 days over on a $22,000 invoice for us. And we had done work for them. They'd always paid on time. It's never been an issue. We send an invoice reminder and we get a response from a woman, and she says, we paid this invoice on 8/25. I don't have a canceled check. You said you paid it by check. You always pay us by ACH. I don't know what's going on here. Can you give me a response? Didn't hear for like 5 days. So I sent a response with the other contact I have at this company and their AP email. No response. So I waited a couple more days. Then I added another person that I knew. And then finally it kind of lit a fire under the person, my contact. And he said, hey, can we get an update on it? The original person responds and says, well, this other person's working on it. Can you give us an update? And I said, I need an update by Friday at 5 p.m. Did not get an update. So that was last Friday. And it's literally just this Monday. I sent an email and I said, if I don't have an answer by 5, we have your phone system. We'll turn your phone system off. Like, all I want is an answer. Mm-hmm. My contact and his boss both responded and are like, can someone from finance please, answer? They did not answer. 5 o'clock rolled around. We had to shut the phone system off. Your services are suspended. We get an email at 6:30. Please pause the suspension. Please, we were working with finance. I'm like, I don't have a response. President of the international corporation responds to the email and says, please, we're going to deal with this. But that's 60 days on $22,000. Mm-hmm.
On top of what you've already fronted, right?
Right, exactly. I've already paid for my labor on it. I paid for all the product. The project is completed. This was a completed project. We've already fronted everything on it. So sometimes that becomes an issue because now you start getting these large payments, and if one or two of them they decide, we'll pay you when we feel like it. Mm-hmm. It becomes an issue.
So knowing all of the things that you know now, as you're kind of breaking through that $2 million plus range, is there anything you would do differently?
See, that's a loaded question because I needed to fail at the things that I failed at to understand where I needed to go. So I think what I would do differently, I think one of the biggest things that's helped me, and this is also something that's not often talked about in business, and my wife pushed me very much to go to somebody who is oriented for therapy for business owners, mm-hmm. to help me work through my anxiety and help me work through, because you're going to have anxiety, you're going to have stress, you're going to have these things, and you've got to be able to take care of yourself. So I wish I would have done that sooner because it helped me get out of this anxious mess that I was, mm-hmm. Which actually wound me up in the hospital. And so that's definitely something I would have done differently. I would have listened to her advice a little bit sooner. And then I would have tried to push myself, executing sooner. Mm-hmm. Kind of understanding that. But to be quite fair, I'm happy to have had the mistakes and the losses and the things that I've gone through to get me to where I am now, because it's really needed to see and have better clarity for the future.
Mm-hmm. There's something to making your own mistakes or knowing what you did wrong that helps you get to that next level because you can see it faster. I know there's a lot of benefits to having mentors and things like that can help you through those things. But I don't, maybe I'm dumb sometimes. I'm I need to make the mistake in order to know, be able to see all of those signs. So
yeah.
All right. So as we kind of move into 2026, what big things are coming for you?
So I have an executive coach that I meet with once a week. And one of the things that he's really begun to push on me, he's from where you were a year ago to where you are now, he said, you've gone from, employee mindset to business owner mindset to scale mindset. And so he's I want you to stop talking about next week, next month. Let's start talking about next year, next 3 years, next 5 years. So setting these things and finding the ways to get the rest of the business automated so that it doesn't rely on me 100%, right? Mm-hmm. Getting the sales kind of oriented in a way that they don't have to ask me questions. They don't need the help anymore. And then building a plan with my operations manager of this is what our goals are. This is what we want to hit this year. And kind of setting those things out and starting to think bigger picture. We opened a small office out in Lancaster, which is where I ultimately would like to retire. It's where my partner is at. And we're starting to sell out there. So next year, obviously, I want to grow our presence heavily out there. And I think the other big thing is that we're going to start to outgrow my home office. We converted an entire 2,500 square foot into a full office space. but we're going to get to a point where it's just going to be too many employees. We're not going to be able to handle it. So I'd like to start looking at getting into a building. But I think one of the passion projects that's coming from this is that I have a deep love for my low voltage industry, and there's not specific schooling really for us. It's usually lumped in as like you could call it almost an electives type course with electrical contracting, but often they don't get into the nitty gritty of the electronics, the AV, like speccing systems out, access control. And so as part of whatever this building is, I would like to build a training center that is oriented for, because most of our techs come to us with little to no experience, and we pay for their training. We pay for them to get certified on our equipment, like on the job training, obviously. And I'd like to be able to extend that to people in our industry in general. So starting to kind of build a plan for that. So 2026 is really going to be a year of getting the company to be able to run and stand on its own without needing me, 60, 70 hours a week. But then also some of those passion projects and developing the things that we really want to be focused on, and me being able to kind of get to the things that are super important to me with the business.
That's a really cool goal to have. This is probably something you or the listeners may or may not know. So my husband passed away in 2020. Well, 2020, I almost said 2025. That would not be right. But he always wanted, he was a truck driver, but he always wanted to work in construction mostly. He wanted to be a heavy equipment operator. But we set up a scholarship that we do $3,000 scholarships. We usually give away like $15,000 a year to kids that want to go to trades. And I always find it really like very heartwarming, first of all, reading their applications and like what they've went through and what they want to do. But I think that's a cool, like having there's only limited trade schools that they can even go to. Like we see a lot of welders, we see a lot of, just various like trades that they can go to and just kind of pick up. But having additional options is a really cool thing that, especially kids that are maybe more like tech savvy like you were and want to go into that kind of field, where it's not like swinging a hammer kind of trade, but a little bit more technical.
Yeah, cool. I think it's definitely important and it's definitely needed. But also, even opening that to companies that do what we do that would like, more training for their people.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big passion of mine, and teaching people and helping people is really huge for me. Mm-hmm. So I absolutely would love to just be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. I love that idea. All right. Well, so you've got some major growth though, and that's a lot of real estate, a lot of team building. Are you thinking like 1 year, 3 years, 5 years? What's your plan?
So that's really, I think within the next 2 years, I'd like to get into the real estate portion of having our own office, our own shop, and a small like training. I wouldn't necessarily call it a training center, but a small section that like we can train people and maybe run classes out of, where it's not like a full-on training center. Mm-hmm. But that I would like to have within the next 2 years. I think within the next 12 to maybe 18 months, 20 months, something like that, I'd like to have the company set up to where, okay, we know what we're targeting, we know what we've got going on, things are repeatable, we have all the processes in place. I'm not in the business that 60, 80 hours. I'm outside focusing on all the big picture stuff. Mm-hmm. But there's, like you said, there's a lot of work to be done before we get to that point.
Good deal. Okay. Is there anything else, any lessons or things that, there's probably a countless amount of lessons that you could probably share, but anything really important that you think anybody getting into any type of business should know?
Well, there's a few things. No matter what you do, you're going to have at some point imposter syndrome, right? There's been plenty of times, like the first time we hit $1 million in revenue, I sat down and I'm like, but why me? Like, why? Like, I felt like I had no idea what I was actually doing. Why did I actually make this $1 million? Like, then you start to look back and you realize like, hey, yeah, you actually do know what you're talking about. You do deserve to be where you are. So don't let that ruin your idea of what it is. Now, also understand that comparison is going to be the thief of joy. You're always going to look at a bigger business. Somebody's going to do more revenue than you. Somebody's going to make more profit than you. It's not always more glamorous. I have a close friend of mine who owns a company that does both the IT and what we do. He's about 5 times our size. And many, many times he has told me, don't do it. Just stay where you are and be happy and don't grow up. So it's not always greener on the other side, right? Bigger isn't always better. There is always going to be more challenges the bigger that you get. So just be prepared for that. But you're not alone. There are a lot of people that will, especially in like networking groups, talk to people. People are very forthcoming with advice. I'm very much one of these people. If you ever needed something, if you ever had questions, if you ever wanted to learn, even people that are local to me that are competitors, we sit down, we have lunch, we talk about, like, there's a guy that has a big AV company. It's much bigger than mine. He does like $60 million a year or something like that. But he can't quite get his foot into the door when it comes to security and access controls and cabling. And so we sat down and it's like, yeah, you're much bigger than me, but I do a lot more volume in this type of work. What do you need to know? And you'll find that a lot of people are more about that abundant mindset than they are about, like, well, no, you're a competitor. You're going to take from me. There's room at the table for everybody, and there's plenty of food to go around. So it doesn't hurt anybody to be helpful, and you'll find most business owners are great for that. So don't be afraid to network. Don't be afraid to talk to people, because you always feel like you're on an island. And the more you talk to people, the more you realize that everybody's on the island with you. The only reason you feel isolated is because you're on the other side and you're afraid to go over and talk to them.
Yeah, I've found that same thing to be true as well. Like, the more that you get out and just, first of all, you have to be willing to share yourself, right? Like, if you are locked down, nobody's going to share their story with you. But like, as you start talking to people, it's like, well, everybody has the exact same problems. They might be like slightly different from business to business, but everybody's dealing with the same things. And most people are willing to share advice on how they got through that. I think to your point too about the growing to a certain level, this is a conversation that I often have with people when I'm asking them what their goals are, and they're like, oh, I want to scale, I want to grow and have multiple locations and things. And I'm like, do you like to manage people? Because it's not going to be so much about whatever your job is or whatever you're doing right now. It's like, do you like to manage people, and do you like chaos? Because honestly, that kind of comes with it. And a lot of times that makes them think too, because it's like, well, maybe it's not so bad where I'm at right now. And I'm obviously not trying to deter anybody from growing, but sometimes it's a gut check to check where you're at. And make sure that the goals that you have in mind are actually aligned with what you want in life.
Right. And a lot of it, a lot of people will point and be like, I want this number, right? Revenue, gross revenue, that top line, that's a vanity. That's all that is. It really doesn't mean a whole lot. My sister, my half sister, she runs her father's business. They do $150 million a year in revenue. She's got a 2% net operating income. So she does $150 million. She's 150 times my size, but I could get to 10 million and have more net operating income than she would.
Oh, absolutely. With a lot less headaches.
Yeah, it's a vanity. It's a vanity. So don't get focused on that revenue number. Be focused on the things that drove you to go into business, and push for that. The revenue will come with it. Just stay focused on like your actual vision, rather than a number, or rather than being able to say I did X, Y, Z. Focus on what you actually got in business to do.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important, like, evaluate that often too, because your goals are going to change, right? On day one, you're probably not like, yes, I want to build $100 million company. Right. But you might start off wanting $1 million, and then you get to $1 million and it's like, oh, well, suddenly you don't have anything next. So you might flounder a bit, but always be evaluating what you want to go for and the why behind that. So, okay. Well, thank you, Bud. It's been a pleasure talking with you today. If people if they want to do business with you and are in the Pennsylvania area as a whole, I think you are willing to travel, but how do they get in contact with you for business opportunities?
Sure. So our website is nyetechnicalservices.com. That's Nye like Bill Nye the Science Guy, NYE. Our phone number is 724-204-1750. You can always find me on Facebook. I'm under Bud Nye. I'm pretty public. And send me a message, or you can also contact the sales email. It's sales@nyetechnicalservices.com. And then, like I said, my inbox is also open for anybody if they ever need advice, if they ever had questions or anything like that. I'm also glad to field you should you need that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Bud. It's been a pleasure, and I will talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon, Jen.